it's just...
So let's say we have a quadratic equation like this. Now, you might look at this and say, well, it's not a quadratic equation, but it is. It is a quadratic equation because there's a t term, and there's a squared term, and that's the highest term, and there's no variables in the denominator anywhere. That 2 maybe looks like it messes things up, but it doesn't. It's just 1/2. So how do you solve a quadratic equation like this? Well, the first step is to put it in standard form. Always put it in standard form, which means set equal to 0. So I always teach people to clear fractions. I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. When I multiply both sides by 2, I get t squared minus t equals 10. Now, here people make a mistake. They think, oh, cool, I can factor this. It's t times t minus 1. But no, don't do that. You can't do that because it's not set equal to 0 yet. The whole point of setting something equal to 0 is the zero product property. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 10 from both sides and set it equal to 0. Now, if it factors, the reason factoring is the easiest way to do it if it factors is because then you can set each one of these linear factors equal to 0. That's what the zero product property says. However, what if it doesn't factor? Like in this case. In this case, this doesn't factor because negative 10 is just 5 and 2, and that's a negative 1, and that's just not going to work. So it doesn't factor, so what do? We use the quadratic formula. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. That's what we do. We use a quadratic formula. Now, there's another thing you can do. It's called completing the square, and you're learning that soon as well. Completing the square works really well when this number here, b, is even, but it's not. Now, you can still use completing the square. It's just not as simple. So I'm not going to do that for this. I'm going to use the quadratic formula. So let's do that. Ready? Here's the quadratic formula. So let's use the quadratic formula. So b is negative b. It's negative 1, which is a positive 1. See how b is negative 1? Plus or minus the square root of b squared, which would be now positive 1, because I'm squaring a negative 1, minus 4a, which is negative 10, c, which is, this is actually the reverse order, not that it matters. This was c, and a was 1, so these could be switched, but it doesn't matter. All over 2 times a. So there's my answer. Now let's simplify it. So order of operations, this is 1 plus 40 inside there, right? So my answer is 1 plus or minus the square root of 40 all over 2. How many answers do I have there?
2.
I have 2 because the plus or minus, there's 2 answers. I can simplify this if I wanted to. Let's rewrite this as 1/2. This is, by the way, what you did with complex numbers too, isn't it? Plus or minus root 40 over 2. Well, root 40 is like 4 times 10, right? So 4, so the 2's are actually going to cancel. So I'm going to change this. It's going to be 2 root 10, so the 2's cancel. So this is just, I'm running out of room here. My answer is just 1/2 plus or minus the square root of 10. Those are my 2 answers. One of them is 1/2 plus the square root of 10. The other is 1/2 minus the square root of 10. Those are my 2 answers for that solve this equation, my original equation. If I were to take these 2 numbers right here and plug them back in for t, I've been writing x, I should have written t. Plug them back in for t in both places and simplify it out. This side, believe it or not, will equal 5 when I simplify it. Because that's what you did. You just solved the quadratic equation. So don't forget when you see a quadratic equation, don't forget your options for solving. Factor, complete the square, or use the quadratic formula. Use the easiest method for you for that particular problem.